For the most part, I'd say I'm a fan of what the Daily Wire does. I do think they are, a lot of the times, just not very fun. They're the kind of people that would drive 5 miles an hour under the speed limit. But for the most part, they make pretty good stuff. The What is a Woman documentary is hilarious and sad. All kinds of emotions surrounding that. But the Matt Walsh fellow went on Joe Rogan, and it was a pretty solid podcast. But I think even his fans would admit that he had a pretty poor showing on the issue of gay marriage. And I think the primary issue is that Matt Walsh is wrong about marriage, but was right. Like, his opinion is wrong now, but it would have been right 50 years ago. So Matt was trying to argue the sanctity of marriage argument, saying it should only exist between a man and a woman. And this is an impossible argument to win in today's society because marriage as an institution is just so eroded that it just doesn't mean anything in practicality. And this is where I say Matt Walsh was right. If this was the 50s, he'd be right. But we don't live there anymore. Matt Walsh just looked foolish. Like, it almost just seemed outlandish that he was arguing against gay marriage because he's defending marriage from a fairy tale perspective, something that does not exist anymore. So what is the function of marriage in the first place? A lot of people are mistakenly going to think that it's about two people falling in love with each other and making a lifelong commitment. No, that is not why marriage was originally thought up and practiced. I mean, you can even look to things like arranged marriages that kind of throw a whole monkey wrench in that. But marriage is something that cultures independently of each other all around the world came to the conclusion that marriage is a good thing. And why? Why did they come to that conclusion? Well, it's because if we let ourselves succumb to our animalistic instincts, then societies end up being extremely unstable because men want to fuck all the women and women only want to fuck the best guy. What this leads to is one man having all the women. And that leads to a large amount of men that are disenfranchised, unproductive, and then eventually violent. And then on the female side, you have a bunch of babies that are not correctly provisioned for because that one man can't obviously provide for all of the babies he's created. So those societies are extremely unstable. So marriage. One man, one woman. That's the compromise. We share 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and obviously chimpanzees don't get married. So what ends up routinely happening in chimpanzee societies is that eventually one man becomes so dominant that the other males get pissed off and overthrow him, and they all gang up on him and brutally murder him. Now, after that happens, it's not all goody two-shoes. No, the society is thrown into a downward spiral power grab situation. And a lot of the times, this does immense damage to the society as a whole. So we humans eventually figured out that marriage is a good compromise. Marriage is a compromise between the male mating strategy and the female mating strategy. It's when men and women come together and the men say, hey, I'm not going to fuck everything that moves. And the women say, hey, I'm not going to try to upgrade. And marriage is a great way to keep people playing the game. Think of society like a board game. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. Yes, the people that are winning will have more and the people that are losing will have less. But we need everybody to play the game. And we can't have the losers feeling so helpless that they just flip the board over, because then that's bad for everybody. So that's the primary benefit of marriage. And the second obvious benefit of marriage is that, for the most part, every child is going to have a mother and a father actively in their life. The nuclear family is stronger. So where did it all go wrong? Well, first big thing that happened was no-fault divorce that Republican Ronald Reagan started. And this was a huge nerf to marriage. Marriage actually used to mean something. The commitment meant something because you couldn't just divorce your spouse over nothing. And now you literally can. It can be for no fault at all, no fault divorce. And the union meant something. Nowadays, people get divorced over minor inconveniences. It used to, back in the day, mean through sickness and health, thick and thin. You were signing up for the almost guarantee that eventually shit was going to get bad, but I got your back and you got my back. I'd wager if you asked an older person that's been married for a long time if they went through periods of unhappiness, and they would say yes, because guess what? Times sometimes suck, and there is no happiness without sadness. So nowadays, people just get divorced over everything. Number 2, there is zero accountability for women getting knocked up. This is something that was not the case in the past. If you were a single mother back in the 50s, I promise you, society viewed you much differently back then. It was a dire, cataclysmic situation. And plus, the government didn't just bail you out back then. Nowadays, the government will be the provider for your child, will father your child, and naturally, back in the 50s, women were very scared of participating in activities that could potentially make them single mothers, because being a single mother was real bad. Like, it was not something you wanted to be. Like, it was like oh man, I don't want to end up like her. Nowadays, that's not so much the case because there's just single mothers everywhere. And number 3, hormonal birth control. Now, I know you squares, the Daily Wire, love to drive under the speed limit and not have premarital sex, but some of us like getting our dicks sucked and driving fast. And quite frankly, when you can have all the fun without any of the responsibilities, why get married? But a big reason why people get married is so they can be in a proper situation if a child was to arrive. And when you don't have to do that anymore, it's definitely, you don't have that same urgency to get married. So with those 3 massive differences in marriage between how it was back then and how it is now, it just doesn't mean anything. The only people that I can even recommend to get married are people that are planning on having children. And even then, those people are still getting divorced like crazy. It doesn't bring stability to society anymore. If anything, it brings instability to society, because you have men that are just getting absolutely brutalized by family courts, losing everything, financially crippled, losing access to seeing their kids either entirely or they just see them much, much less. And the women aren't exactly winning either. Even if they do win custody and financial support, they still have to pay for the lawyers, and now they're branded with the scarlet letter of being a single mother. No one is winning. I swear, marriage is just a grift perpetuated by lawyers. I don't know why anyone would want to be married in the first place. So arguing that gay people shouldn't be allowed to do it is almost silly, because ironically, gay men are actually the best at being married. They get divorced the least. The same cannot be said about lesbian women. They fucking hate each other and just fight. They love to fight. So, shocking conclusion, men are better at being reasonable. Who could have predicted this? So, in conclusion, Matt Walsh is wrong, but he was right. But marriage is not something that can be salvaged. The conservatives genuinely, you guys got to abandon the sanctity of marriage. And you got to abandon, just like you got to abandon weed being illegal and weed being taboo. It's a losing issue. The toothpaste is out of the tube. It ain't going back in, guys. It's not. It's just the institution is entirely eroded. And it's been eroded since before I was born. I'm nearly 30. Marriage has been a joke my entire life. And it's just continually being more and more of a joke. So if gay people want to participate in an overpriced, nonsensical demonstration, then more power to them. And quite frankly, they're better at it than men and women are. So, who are we to judge? Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to subscribe with notifications on. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and join the Discord. It's free.